Hello and a warm welcome to Federal Special Program Capital Beat. Now, what has happened in the past 4 days? India's aviation sector has completely, it seems, collapsed because this entire sector looks like in a chaos because of IndiGo grounding more than 1,000 flights, primarily from failing to plan for new pilot duty hour rules, causing massive passenger distress with long delays, cancellations, and stranded travelers, leading to a government probe and pleas for stabilization, though other airlines have added capacity and railways have offered relief. But what was the reason of this aviation mess? Where does the buck stop? And how will the accountability be set? Because we also saw that the DGCA, the Director General of Civil Aviation, had to withdraw its own circular. So, what does it really go to show as far as this aviation mess is concerned? What are the lessons learned? Joining me this evening is a very special panel of guests. We have retired Air Marshal M. Mateswaran with us. So, thank you so much for joining. We also have Captain Amit Singh, who's a flight aviation safety expert. Thank you so much, Amit, for joining. And I'll begin with Air Marshal Mateswaran. So, what do you think, in your assessment, is the reason for this aviation mess? Could this have been prevented with better planning, with better response systems? And many people feel that this was an artificially created crisis.
Thank you, Niru, for getting me on this program. And let me start by saying that I'm one of the affected parties today. The flight was cancelled today. I'm stuck in Patna, rather Nalanda University. I've been on a visit here. Right. So I don't know how many more days it's going to take to get. The flights are very few from here anyway. Well, let me pick out the larger reasons. Over the years, the government is also guilty of it. IndiGo certainly I consider as a very greedy and unethical airline. And so you've created a monopoly system. And the Competition Commission of India and the government, Ministry of Civil Aviation, as well as DGCA have all failed to prevent this kind of a monopolistic situation. IndiGo holds 65% of the domestic share. And therefore, I think they have resorted to extracting the maximum out of their resources, which is, I would say, fundamentally, it hits at even the issues of safety of passengers, safety of airlines, and it's all about profit maximization. So I would hold IndiGo, DGCA, and the Ministry of Civil Aviation largely responsible for this mess. If you ask me, the promoter and the CEO should go into jail straight away, and then you need to take action on that.
Those are some very strong comments coming from you. And another question to you, Air Marshal Mateswaran, that the very fact that DGCA also seems to be crumbling, where it should be holding the airlines accountable. They should be asking tough questions. But what is the reason for institutions like DGCA also crumbling? It's just not about IndiGo. Of course, this crisis was triggered with the IndiGo, its monopoly, and Competition Commission not doing anything. But at the end of the day, it seems that the government has given a lot of leeway to the DGCA as well as to the airlines. So what does it really go to show as far as the picture in totality is concerned?
Well, I mean, I've seen it from close quarters when I've been in air headquarters dealing with the issues of interacting with civil aviation as well as the other aspects. I would say, and we have a lot of ex-Air Force people flying for various airlines. So we know the fairly closer gen. DGCA has always had problems. And major problems have been lack of professionalism, conflict of interest, I would say corruption as well. And therefore, when something has to be enforced, regulations have to be enforced, it suffers from people who are handling it in terms of lack of experience and professionalism, and people who come into certain decision-making positions are not up to it as well. So here is a case, okay, fine, we give the benefit of doubt to DGCA. They brought in the regulation, introduced it in January 2024, but because of the power of IndiGo, they managed to carry on postponing it every 6 months. So 2 years is a long time for an airline to have addressed the issue. And I believe there's lots of social media comments that are moving about, and some of them are quite credible as well. There is a suspicion that Indigo has manipulated the whole process to create this kind of a mess, which I think is maybe partly true, not entirely. But I would say the larger reason is that Indigo has been ruthless as a machine of extracting the maximum, and the profit maximization motive has been the primary issue. So DGCA should have seen through this. It should have had neutral regulators. There is a news, I'm not sure how true is that one of the vice president of Indigo is also part of the DGCA system. That's a serious conflict of interest. And the second is Ministry of Civil Aviation must come into regulation. So today, like I said, I've been affected party here. The ticket has gone from price from Patna to Chennai in Air India flight now, as of today and tomorrow, has gone up from 8,000 rupees to 75,000 rupees. This is madness, sheer madness. Where is the regulation? This dynamic pricing cannot go. I mean, there has to be a limit somewhere, right?
Yeah,
So all these things give a lot of suspicion that there is a massive unethical forces at work. And here, responsibility is huge on DGC because they're the regulators. They should have actually, been more forceful in enforcing the regulation. And
okay,
I blame DGCA significantly here.
right. I'll come to Amit Singh now. Captain Amit, what do you think is the reason for this current mess? And as Air Marshal Matheswaran pointed out, that DGCA, which should be holding the airlines to accountability, they also seem to be, crumbling and prostrating before the airlines. I was reading a report where various airlines have donated crores and crores of money to the BJP. Now, if this is the scenario as a corporate entity, when they have, of course, they've given donations to other parties as well, but when the BJP coffers are filled to this level, do you think that DGCA or the government can really hold the airlines accountable, and they will continue to rule the roost like what they have done in the last 4 days?
Well, in the last 4 days, we have seen DGCA meow and Indigo roar. So that is the situation right now. And everybody knows who's ruling and who's calling the shots. So the flight and duty time limitation rules were under judicial inquiry, or there was a court case going on since 2019. And by 24, something had to be decided. So before appearing to the court, Delhi High Court, DGCA decided to implement the new rules. And the new rules had 4 major changes. But soon after that, there was a pushback from the operators, especially IndiGo, since they were the largest. And they said they would be affected, their flight operations would be affected, 25% more crew requirement. So that is understandable. But the January implementation was supposed to be in June. And they said we can't do it by June. So again, the Delhi High Court told them that, told DGCA to settle it and prepare a timeline for implementation. So we came up with July and November. That was sufficient. So the issue is that there was somebody in DGCA. The current DG was heading DGCA at that time in March, when first time the airlines went to DGCA for exemptions or not implementing this rule. He was he categorically said that nothing doing. 1st June is the implementation date and it will not change. So the whole fraternity was very happy that this is one person who is standing by his word, and he is here to bring about a change. But then few weeks or month down, we see the entire car put into abeyance, which means there was some higher power beyond his reach and capability and power that he could not basically say no to. So who could that be? Not the ministry, somebody beyond the ministry. That is for sure.
No, but if you are
So
saying
this
very
time again,
clearly, no, Captain Amit, if you're saying it very clearly that it's surely not the ministry, but it's the powers higher above than the ministry. Now, are you pointing out that, the buck stops directly at the prime minister, or maybe somebody who's a little, maybe one or two ranks below? Who could that person be? Of course, everybody will be speculating, but what I'm gathering is that
yeah.
if this kind of a money is put into the coffers of the BJP, then this kind of a compromise or a conflict of interest, which Air Marshal Mathesuran was talking about, is much, much obvious then.
See, the DG is a senior bureaucrat, and bureaucrats have seen how they know how the system works. And the secretary is also a bureaucrat, maybe a level senior to him. So it is not that when he denies or when he says that I will not give any more extension, June 1st is a hard date for implementation. He doesn't know the repercussions. He doesn't know that these airlines will reach to the ministry or beyond them. So he will give a calculated response. Calibrated response was, I know the ministry and the secretary, and he will back me. So that is basically why he will give out a statement so strong that I will not accept any more delays in implementation. But again, this points to the fact that there is somebody beyond the ministry. So that is what my speculation is, that it cannot be. So secondly, if we come to this year, the first phase was implemented in July. Then in September, all of a sudden, out of the blue, DGCA issues a circular, draft circular. It is not public, only to the airlines, that we have to implement fatigue risk management system. So that is uh, another means of implementing fatigue regulation. But that is a very data-based system, comprehensive, systematic system, which requires a lot of training. And after the Mangalore accident, there was a recommendation by the committee that FRMS should be implemented. Soon thereafter, ZADI committee report, which was the only comprehensive report on flight duty time limitation, they said by the time the United Nations or ICAO comes up with the regulation of FRMS, DGCA should start training their people. Because ultimately, once a new regulation comes in, who is going to approve? DGCA. Unless their own people are trained on the system, how will they approve? So right now, there is nobody who has been trained. But in September, they issued a circular that these regulations, and this is a process of implementing, and soon it will be implemented. And what we heard is by December, they should be implemented. All the airlines were told by December they have to be implemented. Now, nobody is trained. So the regulation says, ICAO regulation and Indian regulation says that if you want to implement FRMS, then you have to draw up rules. Regulations have to be drawn. So regulations cannot be drawn from a circular. A circular can only provide you guidance on implementation of the rules. The rules have to be drafted. The processes, they have to be put out for public comments for 30 days. Then the committee convenes and decides which comments are acceptable, not acceptable. Then they come out with a final regulation.
Right.
So bypassing this process, they wanted to implement the FRMS by December through this shortcut.
Right, but what surprises me, Captain Amit, is that we've just had such a big air disaster in during the summertime in Ahmedabad, and despite that disaster, it seems that no lessons are learned. There is so much of compromise on the passenger safety. What is really happening?
Ignorance is a bliss. Safety is perceptional. Like if you're crossing a road in India, a busy road uh, outside of a pedestrian crossing, then an Indian will be very comfortable maneuvering through the traffic. But if a foreigner comes in, he will say this is totally unsafe. So it is perceptional how much of risk you are exposed to. We have been exposed to risk day in and day out. The way the aircrafts are maintained and the ground operations happen and all these, we are exposed to the risk. So our risk appetite is higher. And the thing is that the public, which is the major stakeholder in the whole system, does not have uh,
Say.
a say. Yeah. So there is no body representing the public. So how will they push back? Individual can say that I don't feel safe, but collectively there is no
Yeah,
voice which can say
right.
that no, this is unsafe and this must stop. So that is where the problem is. Individually,
Right.
everybody knows which is a
Hmm.
good
Right.
airline, which is not a good airline.
Right. So basically, I'll come to Air Marshal Matheswaran that there is a fundamental problem here that the watchdog, which is supposed to be neutral, if that is compromised, like what you said, that one of the airlines member is also a member of the DGCA. So this is a fundamental issue. And how can the flights continue to be safe then? And this kind of a mess. And when airlines are having an upper hand on the government, so what can you do, and how long will the aviation sector continue like this? I'm sure with this kind of a pressure, ultimately it's going to collapse, and the passengers will have to bear the brunt like what they've been facing for the last 4 days.
Uh, Neelu, see the Indian aviation sector. It's known one of the probably the fastest growing sector in the world. I think we grow at about almost 30% year on year. That's one. So basic cultural or basic mindset is to look at how fast can we maximize the profit part rather than laying down very safe regulatory mechanisms and very safe practices, ensuring your maintenance practices are above board. All these processes have to be checked. Like Captain Amit said, DGCA they themselves had 2 years to actually evolve the regulatory processes, right? You can't do these things in a circular, right? So this should have been done. That itself indicates or shows the kind of seriousness and the professional approach that these say, and that's well known for we've seen it for 50 years, right? Ministry of Civil Aviation, they should. What kind of a monitoring as a ministry are they doing? And all these issues is that when you allow business houses to actually work towards monopolize the whole sector by knocking off other airlines, through various practices, then you also create a room when somebody holds 65% of the market share. You create a room for them to do whatever they want and bypass the processes. You've seen this even in Boeing. So the Boeing's culture changed when they employed a CEO who's an MBA and has a industrial and technological background, the technocrat background, and their focus then is entirely in a finance perspective, maximization of profit, and that ultimately leads to shortcuts in the processes and quality control, and that's what showed up in the 737 Max accidents. And Boeing tries to deny that, and Air India 171 has major problems in that as well. As a test pilot, we monitored the development of these aircraft. You cannot rush through the development process in the flight testing scenario as well. So this is what has been done in these things. So 110-year-old company itself falls prey to greed and this kind of a profit maximization culture. Indian corporate houses fundamentally have not moved away from short-term profit-oriented
Yeah,
mindsets, and
right.
Is a perfect example of that culture. So they're
Right,
not building,
right,
they're
but
not building businesses,
right. But Emashal Matheswaran, the point is that okay, Indigo, I don't know how they will compensate the passengers, how they will refund the money which the passengers have lost, the kind of travels which the passengers had to face at the airport. But this entire sector seems to be in a mess. And what can the government do, or does it really have the political will to salvage this sector at all? Or they will continue to be in the same mess, and that's how the passengers will continue to face this kind of a pain.
See, if this had happened in Singapore, the Lee Kuan Yew culture would have come down like a, with a ton of bricks, on the airline. And that's the kind of an action the government needs to take now. The first action I would recommend is that break up Indigo into three separate entities.
Yeah.
This monopolies will never benefit the country and will never benefit the passengers. The Interglobe enterprises, I've seen their attempts and actions in from 2015 when they try to knock off other service providers and dominate the complete ground handling services. And I think they dominate the ground handling services today as well. So both on the ground, on the maintenance side, as well as on the on the aviation side, they're a unethical and an entity in terms of monopoly because of the monopoly. So you need to break it up. That's what the US does. The IBM was broken up into three entities because of this requirement.
No,
So I
but
think that
this issue, you pointed out an important thing, and that's what brings me to a question I was reading. And Amit, you can, I think, elaborate on that. I was reading that Adani Defense Systems and Technology is collaborating with Prime Aero Services Limited. It has finalized some agreements to acquire a majority stake in the Flight Simulation Techniques Center, which is FSTC. And of course, this is India's largest independent flight training and simulation provider for an enterprise value of 820 crore. So, like what Air Marshal Matheswaran pointed out, they break the Indigo into three parts. So, to break the monopoly, is Adani, I'm just asking you, though it's speculative, that is Adani trying to enter into this segment? Of course, he's been into handling the ground staff and then the airport infrastructure. But are these the indications that Adani might get into this?
they will. They're already into defense now. They've set up their license manufacture for drones
Okay,
and other systems. They've entered into many other areas as well. It's only a
right,
matter of time that they've got the ports. Again, that's again a bad. It's not a good thing in my opinion, because Adani also is a monopoly. The ports are monopolized by them, and the airports are being monopolized by them. And if
right,
they get into the training and the simulation simulator issue, once again, it's all about business and monopoly control rather than meeting the safety and professional requirements.
right.
That
So,
is another area that is a shortfall in our system, because we buy the simulators, we install, but I think most airlines somehow manage that as far the pilot training is concerned. But I
right,
think fatigue and the fatigue issue is this regulation is an extremely important one, because you've had pilots actually, it's a stressful activity. If I
yeah,
can't imagine 6 landings at a night is actually uncalled for, and
yeah.
the limitations that I bring out are quite sane and sensible, and that should have been done years back.
Right.
This should not have been allowed to happen at all. Captain Amit can actually say a lot more
Yeah,
on
in
that.
fact, yeah,
Hmm.
and I'm coming to the last question to you, Captain Amit. That from what Air Marshal Matheswaran is saying, that could be that Adani enters this segment. So, was this, and that's a tough question, that was this crisis artificially created to benefit Gautam Adani?
Well, they have entered the training section. Training is a very profitable sector, and training has to happen. So there is nothing that training will increase or decrease. It will increase as the airline grows, because we have mandatory training, periodic training, be it 3 months, 6 months, yearly. So all these kind of training. So this is a profit-making sector. Airlines is a sector wherein the profit margins are very thin, to the extent that even the low-cost airlines make about 5 cents per ASKM, air seat miles per kilometers. A little bit of fuel fluctuation, and that profit is wiped out. So a lot of airlines, they have, like the low-cost airlines, earn money from the ancillaries and all that stuff. The big airlines like Emirates, the group earns. The airline itself is making a loss, but cargo and catering, they're making profits. So the group is earning profits. So airline alone, I don't think Adani will venture into airlines, because that is a very complex system, and hardly any profits in it. IndiGo is posting profits because of their structure. But if the training is a huge industry, $1 billion industry, based on the projections of the number of pilots that we are getting. So actually more than 1 billion, depending on the number of aircrafts. If we project 900 aircrafts, the kind of training that will happen. And India does not have training centers. 60% of the training is outsourced to companies, the Canadian company CAE and other companies offshore. So there's so much of forex drain. And in India, we are not developing infrastructure, neither hardware nor the instructors. The standards of instructors is so poor at the foundation state of pilot training in India. So that whole there has to be a big revamp in the whole sector. I'd like to comment on the structure of if you restructure the whole thing, the basic problem is that we have regulations, but we cannot enforce regulations.
Yeah.
That has been proven by the FTTL. So whatever you may get, whatever you may do, unless you are able to enforce them, there have been regulations which have been kept under abeyance for 4 years, 5 years. There is a regulation that companies, airlines in India with more than 10 aircrafts have to have training infrastructure in India. That gets deferred every year for the past, I think, 6 or 7 years. And primarily big companies like IndiGo, who have training happening outside India at 8, 10 centers. So every year that gets deferred. So why make a rule when you have to give exemption? So that is the problem. So then exemption becomes a norm. So what is the purpose of a rule? So if you can't enforce, which means if you cannot keep the system immune from external pressures and influences, then we'll continue to suffer like this. India is resilient. So after every setback, we come back. But there's something called anti-fragility. So the system is fragile. The foundation is weak. So every time there's a pressure on it, the system breaks. Be it fog, rain, or like FTTL and this. So whenever you put pressure on the system, it breaks because the foundation is so weak.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really have no clue as to how the foundation of the aviation sector is going to be strengthened by the government when it looks like there are so many compromises. And as Air Marshal Matheswaran pointed out, the DGCA also has members who have a conflict of interest. DGCA, which is supposed to be a watchdog, gets arm twisted by the airlines. So you can imagine where the aviation sector is headed to. I'll have to end it here. Thank you so much, Air Marshal Matheswaran and Captain Amit Singh. Thank you very much for joining on the Federal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.